As Greg said, we're focused on basically process improvement and productivity as a company, the Bevington Group. We've done about 350 studies since 1993, and 350 studies and around about 200 implementations. In hospitals, what we've tended to find that process inefficiency is a fairly large number. For those who know about lean, they're familiar with the term non-value added. There's a subset of non-value added which we use called noise. Noise is rework, error correction, chasing things that should be there in the first place, looking for patient records, looking for drugs that should be in the cabinet that aren't. We'll talk today about some of the critical success factors if you're going to implement lean or any other process improvement method, because regardless of the method that you implement, there are certain critical success factors that are nearly always valid for implementation. Now, hopefully that'll put you in a position where at least you'll have something of a checklist of things that you need to consider should you be seriously embarking on lean within your own organizations. I have seen a lot of projects in failure mode, be they Six Sigma, be they lean, be they process re-engineering projects, or be they hybrids. And across every single one of those projects that I have witnessed fail, and across all of the projects that I've seen succeed, you can derive the following critical success factors. The first is leadership. If you as the leadership do not have a clear vision as to what you want, which actually is necessary, quite frankly, to select the right tool set anyway, a clear vision on purpose, then the likelihood of the program succeeding is lean, if you exclude the pun. And no matter which management text you look at, there's absolutely no question that purpose and effective leadership is extremely important. And this is not early news. Sun Tzu, right back many years before the birth of Christ, basically did outline that purpose was the first job of leadership. So that is setting the agenda. What are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to achieve incremental change in one or two functions? Or are you trying to give yourself a much better patient journey? Or are you trying to give yourself wiggle room and budget? You would do different things depending on those objectives. If you needed to improve your process and give yourself wiggle room and budget, you'd be looking at process re-engineering or a hybrid thereof. If you're very focused on the patient journey, then you'd be looking at lean. But to do it properly, you do need an end-to-end view. And you may be looking at a smaller and much leaner toolkit, so to speak, if you're only doing small incremental improvements. What is it that you want? And only then can you be given good advice by people who understand this space well. Funding. Without appropriate funding, you will get what you pay for. One of the things that we often observe is that staff are budgeted to get engaged in a project, but they never appear. So it's funding and delivery on the resources being extremely important. And then willingness to remove roadblocks. In the health sector, there are probably more roadblocks given the public sensitivity of the issues, the technical complexities involved in the delivery of service, and the extremely powerful stakeholder groups involved in health. Staff engagement. Well, without engagement on the ward, what we found is very, very little will change. So certainly what we find is, to the extent that the ideas that you're implementing are staff ideas, and the broader you can reach out in engagement, then the better off you will be. So beware of attempts to do lean on a shoestring. For example, if you can only afford to run 3 or 4 workshops involving 5 or 6 key stakeholders in a process that is affecting perhaps 100 people, I would recommend that you don't start. Because the engagement factor will be too light. You need the funds and the budget to broadly engage, and a method to effectively and efficiently engage. Staff engagement is extremely important, and the practitioners should be trained on staff engagement. It's not something that really should be left to chance. And staff engagement really means doing what Toad have become so famous for, which is using staff ideas, the people who are on the ground day to day, and to know what's really going on, and it can generate implementable ideas for change. There are a couple of places that things fall down. One is often in many lean programs there isn't enough detail to generate effective staff ideas. Secondly, staff are not effectively engaged and their ideas are not collected. It's often a set of elite experts whose ideas are collected. Dangerous, very dangerous when you want to actually roll it out onto the ward. The next thing that can happen is even if you collect those details idea, implementation doesn't happen because the tools and structures to manage an implementation are not in place, or even more importantly, the leadership has moved on to the next interesting idea. And there are many interesting ideas in any form of management to catch our attention next, so consistency and focus is exceptionally important. With all of this, adequate resources are important, but I mentioned before there are cases that we've seen, and we do see it in health, that the budget's applied, but the project officer, who is supposed to be 100% released, just ends up being 50% released. Willingness to learn. We all come from a fixed position of some description. We're all the victims of our own experiences. Now, the challenge is to open our minds to different approaches. I have placed up there many different approaches to delivering change, and this is part of being open-minded. The other part of being open-minded is to the ideas for change that come through. And what we say when you get staff ideas for change, you must evaluate them. You must certainly add ideas as a management team. Certainly as a management team, you can adapt the ideas. Certainly as a management team, very importantly, you need to advocate staff ideas for change. You need effective scoping, which really relates to purpose. Unambiguous measurement. Now, we actually find time and time again that measurement is one of the most difficult skills to acquire. I haven't got worked out why, but there's no question that it takes time to teach people how to measure effectively. One of the things that you have to measure is behaviors. So behaviors often need to change before a process can change. So before your process measures improve, for example, bed utilization or bed time, or your theatre utilization, for example, which is always considered to be an important issue, then you will need to measure preceding behaviors that would lead to process change. And finally, effective governance. And one of the key things about effective governance is that it's about little and often. One of the really interesting lean concepts, one of the reasons that we find lean so popular, it helps you think differently. There are two little-known concepts in lean, and one of them is the drumbeat concept. The drumbeat says that good management is little and often. This applies for just about everything. It's breaking down batches in everything you do. So, have a weekly steering committee meeting for 30 minutes is many times more effective than a bi-monthly steering committee of the entire management team for 2 hours. Furthermore, a subset of the management team to manage various lean programs is a much smarter idea, the entire management team, and holding that subset accountable for a particular program is much more effective. When things go wrong, they do tend to go wrong in this order. Leadership commitment, clear purpose, willingness to fund, patience in delivery, and political will to remove roadblocks. In your own journey, things will go wrong. It is inevitable. You'll have 1 or 2 successful projects, but things go wrong. Of course, unsuccessful projects can be swept under the carpet, and there's actually a science for doing that, but mostly what you want to do is learn the lessons and move on to the next project. That requires a great deal of political will. So senior management commitment and leadership, therefore, is the first, second, and often the third reason for program failure. And it's very important to stay consistently focused on a program and be crystal clear what you want from it. Measures. Part of being crystal clear what you want from it is answering the question, how will you know if it has worked? So you know if it's worked based on what? Financial measures, process measures, which might include throughput measures, measures of change, measure of the number of things that you have done to improve the process. What do you want to see? How would you measure it? How would you know it's worked? And one of the important things that we've learned over the years is that measures don't just tell you whether it's working, measures actually tell you, give you ways to actually make the change happen. Because no one likes the measure to beat them. So there actually can be drivers for change themselves.